We're just waiting for one more board member to show up, and then we will start the meeting. Thank you.
Welcome and good evening to the August 10th meeting of the City of Kalamazoo Zoning Board of Appeals, a voluntary advisory board appointed by the City Commission. Mr. Eldridge, could you please conduct the roll call vote?
Yes. Turpinning?
Here.
Vanden Hamburg?
Here.
Work?
Here.
McReynolds?
Here.
Holder?
Here.
And we've heard from Ms. Harrington that she's going to be absent tonight.
For each public hearing, public comments will be accepted during the times as indicated on tonight's meeting agenda. Community members that wish to provide public comments over the phone can call 888-382-9556 during the public comment period. They will enter a queue and will be prompted to offer their comments in turn. Callers will be commenting to the board live and will no longer be able to leave a recorded message. Are there any announcements or changes to the original agenda?
There are no changes this evening.
We will move on to the acceptance of last month's minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to accept and approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
Is there a second?
I support.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please signify by saying aye. Voice vote to approve, motion carried. I will now explain the procedure for tonight's public hearing. For each request, the secretary will read the application into the public record. The applicant or representative will then have 10 minutes to provide their comments. Upon approaching the podium, we ask that the applicant or representative speak slowly, stating their name and organization if necessary, and address, so that we can enter that information into the record. Following that, the public is invited to step up to the podium, starting with those who wish to speak in favor of the application. Slowly and clearly state your name and address, and present your comments within the 3-minute time limit. Following that, the public is invited to step up to the podium with those who wish to speak in opposition of the application or otherwise to comment and do the same. Next, we will hear any call-in comments that will be aired for the board and audience. After this, we will close the public hearing on the request. Once the public hearing is closed, the board will then conduct what is called a finding of fact, where the board states what they feel are the facts of the request. The board must approve the finding of fact. Therefore, the first vote you hear is not a ruling on the request, but a vote on the finding of fact. Then the board discusses the request in order to determine a ruling. The board reserves the right to ask questions of persons who have already spoken, even though the public comment portion is closed. Once discussion is ended, the board will move on to a roll call vote. A full board consists of 6 members with 4 votes required to grant a non-use or a use variance. Will the board secretary now read the first application into the record?
Microphone. So this is, you want the ZBA number is number 230711, which is, make sure I'm reading the right one, an application for a variance for provisions of the zoning ordinance has been filed by the zoning board of appeals by Kalamazoo Christian Schools for 2121 Stadium Drive and 2100 Sheffield Drive in the residential multifamily district RM15 and the residential single dwelling district. The applicant is requesting the following: to authorize a larger freestanding sign at the corner of Stadium Drive and Howard. 1, a dimensional variance from Appendix A, Chapter 7, 7.3A1 to allow a 45 square foot freestanding sign where 32 square feet is the maximum size for a special use in a residential zone district. 2, a dimensional variance from the same appendix and chapter to allow a 9-foot tall freestanding sign where 6 feet is the maximum height for a special use in a residential zone district. And finally, 3, a dimensional variance from Appendix A, Chapter 7, 7.2D to allow a freestanding sign with 50% changeable copy area where 25% is the maximum changeable copy area on a sign for a special use in a residential zone district. Please note that this request will not change the zoning classification for the property. This is a request for variances only regarding the items described above.
Will the applicant please step up to the podium, sign in, provide us with your name, and explain your request in the 10 minutes provided?
And while the applicant is signing in, just wanted to mention the applicant provided some exhibits, which I'm going to pass out to the board members, which are images of the proposed sign, as well as some examples of other signs in that area of the city on Stadium and Howard. Anyways, that's what the additional paperwork is that's being passed around.
Perfect. My name is Paul Havenar. I'm with Sign Impressions, 3929 Ravine Road, and I am representing Kalamazoo Christian tonight for the variance. First off, I appreciate you guys listening to our request and showing the need for the larger sign. As you note, the proposed sign that we're asking for is on Stadium Drive. Most of the traffic that the school gets for events comes from Stadium Drive. That is why it is critical that this new proposed larger sign, that's why we're asking for it. Although the school property is zoned residential, Stadium Drive is a very busy road, as you can see. It's very heavily used in comparison to a standard residential road. If this were in a housing community, I think it would be a different scenario. So that's, again, one of the reasons why we're requesting a larger sign. I have some exhibits of different scenarios that I want to go through. So once those are all handed out, just showing the different signs. So Exhibit A shows 2 of the neighboring signs, okay? Second Reformed Church is to the west. It is 14 foot 2 inches tall. It is also a total square foot of 54.16 square foot. In comparison to what we're asking for is actually an 8 foot 10 tall sign at 46 square feet. The other sign that is on that page is Miller Auditorium. That sign is 18 feet tall with a total square foot of 172.5. So again, if you look at the representation of those 2 neighboring signs in comparison to what we're asking for, it's very small in comparison. So the next exhibit is Exhibit B, which shows the existing sign at 60 total height, 60 inches, in comparison to the 106, which is 8'10", the total height. So there's, again, I wanted you to see what the difference between what is there currently and what we're proposing. Exhibit C shows, and I know there was some topos that you had provided for everybody. There's a significant drop in the distance from Stadium Drive to the sign height of what the current sign is. So that Exhibit C shows, exactly, there's a 47-inch drop from grade of that sign to Stadium Drive heights. So again, there's a big jump, and that's what I'm trying to show is what that distance actually is from the view of Stadium Drive. And again, Stadium Drive is where most of all the traffic comes from. That's why we want to raise that sign up, because we want it good and visible. Exhibit C2 is the same scenario of that 47-inch height difference with what the current sign is and what the new sign would be. Even raising that up, we're still, part of it's going to get covered because of the drop in the actual land, But again, we're trying to be flexible ourselves so that we can get the best visibility and yet not be too overwhelming with the size of the sign. So, I think that's all I have. So there are several reasons for the variance that have been presented. We ask that you grant this request for the larger sign. Just on what we've shown you here, we feel that we have a good case. Do you have any questions for me?
What sign company were you with again?
Sign Impressions.
Sign Impressions.
Yep, been in business since 1985.
And what is the drop from the street to
47 inches.
47 inches?
Mm-hmm. Other questions?
Is it your business practice to limit the amount of brightness for the signs for the copy change area?
That can all be adjusted as needed. It's all programmable, so.
Is that part of your business standard, as other sign companies have come before us, because of it being sometimes considered a hazard to very busy or populous stated intersections, that they choose not to use 100% brightness? Do you have any business stance on that or expectation for this site?
Well, again, we have to conform to what the standard is, and Mr. Eldridge would be more in line with what that standard is. So whatever is required is what it would be programmed to do.
Well, and I think Mr. Turpinning is also getting at, will this be equipped with a photo cell so that it will automatically dim down during the evening and nighttime hours?
Yeah.
Because I think, some of the examples around the city, which are not good examples, are older LED signs that are the same illumination level in the daytime as they are in the nighttime.
At nighttime, right.
And, if light backgrounds are used, they're almost blinding at night.
Right.
But yeah, all the newer ones coming out are self-adjusting.
Yep.
So,
technology, just like in everything, has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. So, yeah.
yeah, so it will have that technology will
Absolutely.
be part of this LED panel. Okay.
Yep.
All right, great.
Other questions?
I don't have any for the applicant at this point.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul. No further questions.
All right.
Okay. I will now open the public hearing by inviting those who wish to speak in favor of the request to please step forward. Okay. I will now invite those wishing to speak in opposition to the request to please step forward. Are there any call-in comments?
One moment, please. We have no call-in comments.
Okay. I will now close the public portion of this meeting. As a board, is there any further discussion or additional questions before establishing the finding of fact?
I'm curious if Pete can answer a question. So the other signs here in Exhibit A are for the Second Reformed Church and Miller Auditorium. We all know these ones. Are they in the same zone, like technically, as the school are?
The Second Reformed Church, I believe, is in the same zone. Miller Auditorium is in a multifamily residential zone, but it is part of Western's property, which means it's not subject to the local zoning standards because they are a state institution. So that's where, when you're looking at the square footage, and, you know, it's 172 square feet, so it is a rather large sign. Anyways, it is an example of a sign that is in close proximity to Kalamazoo Christian High School, but it is an anomaly where it isn't subject to our local zoning standards for signs.
Okay, so then as a comparison, you would have, Second Reformed Church would have had to have gotten a variance the same as they're seeking, given the size of the sign involved, is that right?
Or was it grandfathered in?
Yeah. I don't believe there's a variance for that one. So it may have been grandfathered in. They may have had a similar sign there, prior to any zoning changes over the last 2 decades. And therefore they were, they've been essentially refacing, an older sign. But yeah, it is larger than what would be permissible in the zone along there, along Stadium Drive. Madam Chair, may I make a few staff comments before the board deliberates on these requests? Thank you. So, as was indicated in our staff report and for the viewing audience, so we have 3 variances that are being discussed tonight, and they will be voted on separately. The first one is related to the overall square footage of the sign. The applicant is requesting 45 square feet, and the city of Kalamazoo, as many people know, is undergoing some ordinance text amendments as well as some commercial property rezonings, and we are moving those through the Planning Commission starting in September and then on to the City Commission after that. And amongst the zoning ordinance text amendments, there are some sign code changes, and those will impact the square footage for a property like this that is on a collector street, allowing for a 36 square foot freestanding sign. The applicant is asking for 45, so it's still 9 square feet larger. But I wanted to make that change known because currently the standard is 32 square feet. So I'm just going to, comment on the ordinance amendments and, once those go into effect later this year, what that means for, this particular sign. The second request is related to the height. Currently, we allow 6 feet tall for freestanding signs in these residential zone districts. The ordinance will change that to allow for 8 feet tall. The applicant is requesting 9 feet, so 1 foot higher than what the new standard's going to be. And with that, the applicant has laid out the topographic change between the road level of Stadium Drive and the yard area where the sign placement is. And then the third item is related to the square footage of the changeable copy and what percentage of the overall sign area that covers. And the current standard is 25% of the sign area can be made up of changeable copy or LED, or an LED display. And that will be changing to 50% this fall when these ordinance amendments are approved. So what the applicant is asking for number 3 does align with our proposed change to the sign regulations later this year. And with that, I also wanted to note, this property has frontage on both Stadium Drive and Howard, which are high traffic roadways labeled as city connector streets. And this property also has a substantial amount of frontage. I'm trying to put my finger on it here. It's, I believe it's roughly 500 feet of frontage on one street and closer to 7 on the other. But it's a substantial amount of street frontage. And, so they really are trying to get some improved visibility on the corner and have, in staff's opinion, done a good job trying to align the needs of the school for a better sign that's more visible and more functional, closely with our proposed ordinance amendments. So those are my comments. If there's any questions for staff, I'm available.
I'm sorry, I don't want to jump over the top of you, but somebody please check my math, but I think these are larger in square footage than like they say. And the reason I say that, if the sign is 9 foot tall by 94 inches wide, that's basically 8 feet wide. That's 72 square feet, not 45. So we don't count the bottom 30 inches?
We do not count the sign base.
Okay.
We're looking at the LED panel and the advertisement panel above that.
Okay.
The reason for that is, well, in this case, it says Stadium Drive Campus, but a lot of times the base of the sign is used as the identifier. There'll be an address identified there, or it'll just be blank, but it's as long as it's not, there's not signage per se, commercial signage on the base, then typically that is allowed to be exempted out.
Okay.
But good question, very good question.
Learned something today.
And just as another example, if you look at the Second Reformed Church, they've got a rather large brick base, and that's the reason there's so much, mass around the actual, we're calculating the sign area, but that has its own base that is not included in the sign calculation.
Any further comments or discussion? Is there a motion for the finding of fact?
I move that the finding of facts for 2121 Stadium Drive and 2100 Sheffield Drive shall include all the information included in the notice of public hearing dated July 26, 2023, and the agenda packet staff provided. 64 notices of public hearing were sent, 0 responses were received. The applicant had signed impressions. Speak for the applicant, Paul Havener? Havener. Most of his focus was on the drop from Stadium Drive and the visibility of the sign from Stadium. Public comments were none. The finding of fact shall include all the facts and the comments made during the public hearing tonight. This is the finding of fact for ZBA number 23-07-11.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the finding of fact?
Second.
All those in favor of accepting the finding of fact, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please signify by saying aye. Voice vote to approve, motion carried. Now that the finding of fact has been approved, we will have a discussion regarding the applicant's request. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay. It's time to bring the applicant's variance request to the board for a vote. Okay. Since this application has 3 variances, we're going to vote on each one. Is there a motion on the application to approve a dimensional variance from Appendix A, Chapter 7, 0.73A to allow a 45 square foot freestanding sign where 32 square feet is the maximum sign size for a special use in a residential district?
I'll make that a motion that we approve the variance to allow for a greater sign area than what is currently allowed.
I support.
Okay. Mr. Eldridge, may I have a roll call vote?
Turpinning,
Yes.
Wark,
Yes.
McReynolds,
Yes.
Holer,
No.
Vanden Hamburg.
Yes. The motion to approve this variance request has been granted. Okay. Is there a motion on the application to approve a dimensional variance from Appendix A, Chapter 7, 7.3A1 to allow a 9-foot tall, to allow for a 9-foot tall freestanding sign where 6 feet is the maximum height for a special use in a residential zone?
Sure, I move that we approve this variance.
I support.
Mr. Eldridge, may I have a roll call vote?
We'll start with McReynolds,
Yes.
Holer,
Yes.
Wark,
Yes.
Turpinning,
Yes.
Vanden Hamburg.
Yes. The motion to approve this variance request has been granted. Is there a motion on the application to approve a dimensional variance from Appendix A, Chapter 7, 7.2D to allow a freestanding sign with 50% changeable copy area, where 25% is the maximum changeable copy area on a sign for a special use in a residential zone district?
I move to approve.
Second?
Mr. Eldridge, may I have a roll call vote?
Turpinning,
Yes.
Wark,
Yes.
Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Holer,
No.
McReynolds.
Yes.
The motion to approve this variance request has been granted. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. We are going to move on to the next item on our agenda.
You ready for me to read it?
Please.
This is regarding ZBA number 230814, which is an application for a variance for provisions of the zoning hold on, start that sentence over. An application for a variance for provisions of the zoning ordinance has been filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals by Jacqueline Fullerton for 1108 North Church Street in the there I went, am I here still? In the residential multifamily district RM36. The applicant is requesting a dimensional variance from Appendix A, Chapter 4, 4.2 K2C to allow a group daycare on a local street where zoning ordinance requires that group daycares must be located on a collector or arterial street. Please note, this request will not change the zoning classification of the property. This is a request for variance only regarding the item described. Zoomed out there.
Okay, all right. Will the applicant please step up to the podium, sign in, provide your name, and explain the request in the 10 minutes provided?
Evening. My name is Jacqueline Fullerton, and I'm at address 1108 North Church Street. I am a licensed daycare provider. I was here last month, and I was granted, approved for, I was approved, to have the daycare, but I needed the variance.
Yeah,
So-
special use permit
Yeah,
was
the
what
special-
what was before the planning commission last month.
Yeah, last month, thank you. And so my reasoning is there is a demand for childcare in our area. So I've been doing childcare I've been licensed for a year. I have a whole lot of grandchildren and great-grands and nieces and great-nieces and stuff that I take care of. Now it is a great demand for child care. So I am licensed for 1 to 6 child at this time. So what I'm trying to do is get to have at least up to 11 or 12 kids at a time. So I'm just here, just to, I ain't trying to do nothing, out of the ordinance. I just want to, be a help to society, especially dealing with, low-income families and everything of that nature. So I love kids, and I had 6 of my own, 17 grandkids, and a host of great-grands, and I know that this would be productive in our community to have a place, where parents can feel safe, with leaving their children in my care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Would staff like to make any comments related to this request?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so Ms. Fullerton was, as mentioned, was before the Planning Commission on July 20th of 2023 for a special use permit, which is a requirement for group daycares. And there was no public comment in opposition at that time. The Planning Commission talked about and reviewed the location for the group daycare, the property, the outdoor play area. What Ms. Fullerton has is essentially she has 2 lots. She has acquired a lot next to her home, which now houses a large outdoor play area. And so there is ample outdoor space required for, bumping up to 12 children, which it's 100 square feet of outdoor space per child is the minimum requirement. So, in addition to, the large yard and, the layout and so forth, and the fact that this has been a 6-child daycare, since 2022. The only item that did not align was the fact that our ordinance has a clause that group daycares have to be located on an arterial or collector street. And that requirement is something that for the viewing audience, it's also in the staff report, but that is a standard that is going to be removed from the zoning ordinance with the proposed changes, which will, allow for group daycares in a more flexible manner throughout our community. There was a real question about the purpose and intent behind only allowing them on busier streets, which is not exactly where you typically think of, daycares being located. So anyways, that standard is proposed to be changed, but in the meantime, it is part of the zoning ordinance. And so what the Planning Commission did at their meeting in July was they approved the special use permit, but conditioned that approval on Ms. Fullerton achieving a variance tonight from that one provision about group daycares being located on a collector or arterial street. So that's what brings Ms. Fullerton here before the board tonight. Thank you.
I will now open the public hearing by inviting those who wish to speak in favor of the request to please step up to the podium, sign in, and provide us with your name and address. Seeing none, I will now invite those wishing to speak in opposition of the request to please step up to the podium. Are there any call-in comments?
We have no call-in comments related to this case.
Is there any further discussion or additional questions before establishing the finding of fact?
Sure. These might be something that Pete can speak to. What is the difference? I guess I want to know is, what is a collector or arterial street as opposed to a local street? I think intuitively we all understand, but is there an actual definition for it, or some place that says Westnedge is a collector or arterial? How is that figured?
Yes, those are laid out in the master plan, and we now have a Streets for All guide that lays out the different street classifications. Unfortunately, we are transitioning, because we are transitioning from the former ordinance language, the names, like arterial is not a street classification we use in the new hierarchy that's been created. But I guess in general, what the ordinance is speaking to, the collector streets are like Howard, Stadium Drive, the last request we had before the board tonight. Arterial streets, the original classification there included roadways like Portage Street, Cork Street. So these are fairly high traffic locations. And I don't know the backstory on the ordinance and the reasoning, for locating all group daycares on busier roadways. I don't know if they had difficulties with narrow residential streets that didn't lend themselves for good, enough space really for the pickup and drop off of up to 12 children, morning and afternoon or morning and evening. But regardless, that is the language that was adopted. I know it's been in the ordinance since at least 2005, probably longer than that. But yeah, to answer your question, we do have a new hierarchy for street classifications, and that is, that is in the Streets for All manual. There's, that would be the most up-to-date if somebody was to want to look that information up, and it is available on the imaginekalamazoo.com website.
And it might have said in the report, but I'm blanking on it. Are any of the streets on the map attached? Are they collector or arterial streets? I imagine Burdick is one of them. But is like Patterson a arterial street? Do you know?
So Patterson would be, and North Park Street,
North Park Street on here.
to the west, to the left, or towards the left
Oh,
on the
there
map.
it is,
Yep.
okay. So literally, if she were at the other end of her block, this would be a non-issue.
Correct.
And if she were like one block over, it would be a non-issue. Okay. That was more for my curiosity than anything else. Thank you.
That's good to note for the record, too.
Yeah.
Any further discussions or questions before establishing the finding of fact? Okay. Is there a motion for the finding of fact?
My apologies. We were just walking through the finding of fact process and making sure that it was going to all come together here.
The finding of facts, I move that 1108 North Church Street shall include all information, including the notice of public hearing dated July 26, 2023, and the agenda packet staff provided. 64 notice of public hearing were sent and 0 responses were received. Mrs. Fuller had responded on some of the things that was going on, and that was about it.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the finding of fact?
Second.
All of those in favor of accepting the finding of fact, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please signify by saying aye. Voice vote to approve, motion carried. Now that we have had the finding of fact has been approved, we will have a discussion regarding the applicant's request.
Anybody got anything they want to add?
No.
Okay. It is now time to bring the applicant's variance request to the board for a vote.
Madam Chair, just for future reference, when we get to the discussion of the application, that's always a good opportunity for board members to reiterate, practical difficulties or hardships or situations that align with either supporting or not supporting the variance. So you can take that opportunity to say, I'm going to be supporting this variance because of, its alignment with the, proposed ordinance changes coming up. Anyways, I just wanted to mention that because I think we get really quiet during that section of the meeting, and that's really the purpose behind it, is to,
Okay.
so that way we get more information in the record about, why the board is leaning towards approving something or leaning towards denying something. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eldridge.
Oh, sure, I'll weigh in and then I'll just say that the reason I'm gonna support it is that we're gonna they're changing the ordinance anyway to remove this arterial collector street thing, so it's gonna happen one way or the other, and if we say no, she's gonna, as soon as they change it, she's gonna do it. That's not me being fatalistic, it's just me saying, why make this poor lady wait for that? Also, if she were like one street to the west, one street to the east, not a problem. So I'm in favor of it.
I agree with that too. Yeah, I don't know why they would, not approve that situation. Yeah, it's just a matter of time.
Not having children myself, I would assume that we probably don't want them playing near major arteries or streets. So it makes sense to me, I guess, to remove all this gobbledygook, as the city is planning on doing anyway. And I appreciate you not letting kids play in busy intersections.
Well, I will be voting in support of Ms. Fullerton's dimensional variance.
I'll be voting for it as well, because of all the comments mentioned tonight.
Mark them all yes, Pete. We'll take the vote and make it official.
Okay.
All I need is a motion and a second now.
What was a motion to approve the variance? Did we already make one?
No, we
I-
didn't make one.
Oh, sorry.
Getting to that part in my, I've got to have a script.
Sorry.
Okay. It is now time to bring the applicant's variance request to the board for a vote. Is there a motion to approve the dimensional variance from Appendix A, Chapter 4A 4.2 K2 to allow a group daycare on a local street where the zoning ordinance requires a group daycare be located on a collector or arterial street?
Oh, sure, I make the motion to approve that.
I support it.
Mr. Eldridge, may I have a roll call vote?
Yes. We'll start with McReynolds,
Yes.
Holder,
I'm a yes.
Vanden Hamburg,
Yes.
Wark,
Yes.
Turpinning.
Yes.
The motion to approve this variance has been granted.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Are there any more action items, requests, anything for tonight?
I have no more items for discussion or action tonight. Thank
Okay.
you.
Is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
This meeting is adjourned.